is Hal Trifon, and I was in the 13th Air Force Fighter Division, the 44th Group, and we were stationed in the Philippines, and we were on a lot of different islands. We moved around quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
When I went over there, we were in a pilot pool for a while in New Guinea, and we had to get some flying time in, so they didn't have P-38 at that area. So we had a chance to check out a P-47, which was affectionately called a Jug, because that's what it looked like. I remember flying low over some of the area there, and eventually from there, which was a pilot pool, we were distributed to our unit. I was stationed on Mindanao. We flew our missions out of there. What we were doing mainly was convoy cover down in Balikpapan Bay of Australia. So that was about a 3 to 3.5 hour flight down there, and the same back, but we spent some time down there, and we flew down at about 30,000 feet. One of my engines went out. There's a number of procedures that you do to try to reignite it. None of them worked. So I radioed my squadron leader and told him I was going back. I flew back to my camp where we were in the airport, and I called ahead and said, "Mayday, Mayday, I'm one engine out and I need an emergency landing." And the tower responded positively to me, so I made my turns and headed towards the runway. And as I'm maybe 500 or 600 feet high, some guy in a night fighter pulls out on the runway I'm going to land on. I'm on the horn pretty good.
Yeah.
And somehow or another they got him to move, and I was able to make my landing. I did not have to go around.
What year did you become a pilot?
44.
In 44?
1944.
At the early part of the year, or?
You know, that's too far back for me to remember. I don't know.
That's okay.
We did have some other missions where we would go in and try to eliminate some of the Japanese encampments on some of the islands there.
Mm-hmm.
There was an ace in the area, a P-38 ace, and I was chosen as his wingman. That's not necessarily an honor because he lost a few wingmen. And anyway, we went into a target encampment, and we were carrying napalm bombs under our wings, where they were actually looked like the auxiliary gas tanks, but they were filled with napalm. Napalm on sudden contact actually explodes into fire. So we were coming into the encampment, and he's going dead straight towards the camp, and we're getting shot at. There's ack-ack all around us. And that's when I learned how maneuverable a P-38 was, because there's no way I was just going to sit on his wing. I'm kind of moving around a bit.
Sure.
Because I really don't want to get shot out of the air. But we did come in, we made our pass and dropped our bombs. P-38 has a rear view mirror on it, and you can, after you drop your bomb and pull up, you can just look in the rear view mirror and we'd see this unbelievable plume of fire that was the result of our bombing. There were a lot of things that happened in training when I was still in the States that I think are of some interest, because they're certainly interesting to me, because a couple of them I'm amazed that I'm still moving around. There's a set pattern that you use when you come into land. You have one leg this way, and then this way, and then the actual landing. And as I'm on the final approach coming into land, the plane I was in had a clear canopy. It was a BT-13. And as I'm coming in, my eyes go up and I see an airplane right above me that's not supposed to be there, and he's coming into land as well. And the I don't know how the tower didn't pick it up, but they didn't. That was probably the closest I came to death while I was flying in the service. So fortunately, I had an opportunity to peel off and get out of there and call the tower and make a re-entry and to land. There was one other instance that I was also pretty frightened of. I had an emergency appendectomy, and I was out for about a month. I was allowed to go home for about a month to recuperate. I was in the hospital with I had received the surgery on my appendectomy, and I had a very modern young doctor. In those days, when you had an appendectomy, normally you stayed in bed, you didn't move for like 6 to 10 days, and they were very, very careful about getting you up. Well, he didn't believe in that. He believed that you, like they do now, that you need to get up and move around to keep from getting adhesion. So he came in after the operation about the next day, and he comes over and says, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm doing pretty good." And he says, "Well, let me take a look at it." And he pulls up my gown and takes a look, and he takes his hand like this and goes right on the incision. And the reason he did that, as I know now, I finally found out then, was to break up any adhesions that were in there. But you know, when somebody hits me on an operation that I've just had, I had a reaction, and I smacked him in the jaw. He was good enough to laugh it off, but he did it again the next day, and I didn't hit him.
That's a good one. I think I would smack him too.
Crazy stuff. The first mission they put me on was what they call a round robin, where you plot your map in a triangle, and you fly out at certain distance, and you see a beacon, then you make a turn, go to the second beacon, and then you make another turn and come home. So I plotted it out. You plot the winds and you do all that. Well, I took off, and I was plotting my times, and I never saw the first beacon. So I flew out the correct time and made my turn to the right. Never saw the second beacon. And then I made my right turn, hopefully to come home, and I don't know exactly where I am. My canopy, where I look out with the front, the windshield, where I look out, starts to get little beads of oil on it. My prop sprung a leak. Those were hydraulic props on that particular airplane. And it became kind of difficult to see because I couldn't see through it. But I did see like some light on the ground, so I knew there was somewhere civilization. All I want to do is get back to the airport. I really couldn't see too well, so I put on the lights and I was reading my map, trying to find out where I was, and then I did see some taillights from another airplane. Apparently I was not too far off the track I was supposed to be on, so I moved over that way to follow them. My prop got worse and worse and worse, and so I called into the tower and told them I needed an emergency landing. And as I turned into the, I had opened the canopy a little bit, which is what you do when you're coming into land. You crack it. At that point, my earphones blew off. And I had no contact with the tower, and they were trying to assist me in landing, so they turned on all the landing lights. The minute they did that, it put a glow up on the windshield. I couldn't see anything. The way I made my landing was not really a landing. I affectionately call it a controlled crash. So I stepped down like that little by little until I felt the ground. And that's how I made my landing.
Must have been a long runway.
I'm sorry?
Must have been a long runway.
It was tough. I still cringe a little bit when I think about it, but you know, it wasn't my time to go. There was a lot of interaction with the Zeros that were a very maneuverable airplane. They were totally lacking in armament and protection for the pilot. But there was a lot of air-to-air combat with all different kinds of United States aircraft. But the bottom line is that we lost more aircraft and men to weather than we lost to enemy action over. Many people don't know that.
No.
No. It's a fact. A lot of pilot error is the reason that we lose people. We were overseas, and I was being transported from one air base to another, and we were on a DC-2, and there were a lot of guys on the plane, you know, and the pilot's not paying any attention to who's where. A lot of guys were in the back of the plane talking. He didn't distribute the weight, which you're supposed to do before you take off. And we're taking off on one of these constructed runways that's a bunch of dirt with a metal grid layer over it.
Oh.
If you crash on that, the plane rolls up in it and you're gone. So he starts to take off, and there's way too many guys in the rear end, and we're taking off like this, just barely almost in a total stall. And I'm looking up at trees and hoping we get the heck off the ground. We did.
That's good. What was your favorite airplane?
My favorite airplane by far was the P-38. It just was so easy to fly. I'm still fortunate enough to remember that as short a time as 4 or 5 years ago, I'd have dreams that I was flying the P-38, and I could still see all the instruments, exactly where they were. You know, there were 2 sets, one for each engine, and I just dreamed I was flying it.
Wow.
P-38 is a twin-engine plane, and there's a pilot's nacelle. You sit in the middle, where the 2 engines are on the outside. And one of the tendencies of a P-38 is that if you have to come in and land with one engine, you cannot go around, because to take enough power to get you, if you miss your landing and you want to take off again, it takes so much power that it overpowers the capability aeronautically of the airplane. It was the first fighter plane that I flew. And prior to that, I flew single-engine planes. This was a 2-engine plane. And when I was overseas, I also flew a B-25, a B-26.
P-51?
P-51, yeah. P-51. I didn't have much. I only had one flight in a P-51.
Did you get proficiency time?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, where you get to go up and practice flying?
Oh, yeah.
Just for the fun of it?
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't for the fun of it. You had to put in so many hours.
Yeah?
So, to keep your wings, so to speak.
Yeah.
Most of the planes, in fact, all of the other planes that I flew, you have to deal with torque, because the engine is going one way, and it works like a gyroscope that wants to direct you. And so in takeoff or landing, you have to manipulate the rudders to compensate for that. Well, the P-38 had counter-rotating props, so you didn't have any of that to deal with. And we used to use that to our advantage when we were also in training. The Navy Corsairs would come up when we'd have mock dogfights here. And the Corsair is a beautiful airplane, very maneuverable. It's a gull wing. It has a very unique look. Anyway, we'd play around in the sky, and we'd let them get on our tail. Then we would just pull straight up, give it full throttle, and the plane would go like this, but it would hang there almost like a helicopter. And you'd look in your rear view, and there was this guy trying to keep up with you, and he just couldn't, and he'd have to fall off. I had one other experience that might be of interest. This was in the mid-range trainer, the BT-13, and which was known to be not the best plane in a spin. But as part of our training, we had to execute spins, and we'd be up on our own. You were soloing. So I was up at about 5,000 feet. So I get up there and I put it into the spin and let it go a little bit, and then I decide I will recover. I do the recovery move, and it just starts to spin the other direction.
Oh.
So I put it back into a spin the original way, and I tried it again, and it didn't come out. So I'm now at about 2,500 feet, and I'm really frightened. So I'm getting ready to bail out of there. So I throw the canopy back, and as I opened it up, it changed the airflow on the airplane, and the darn thing came out all by itself. You know, in advanced training, we flew a a Northrop Grumman airplane, what the AT-6,
Mm-hmm.
which really helped me fly the P-51 because they had a lot of similar characteristics.
When you were growing up and throughout the war, and I guess even after the war, how was Memorial Day perceived?
Well, you know, at first, it had tremendous meaning for me because it was still imminent in my mind. Unfortunately, human nature kind of has a tendency to put aside things once they've passed and are over. It brings back memories, and I still get solicitations for war veterans that I always respond to. And but I think people have a tendency to forget. I think one of the most prominent things in my mind is the Holocaust, that many people don't even believe it ever happened. So, and I remember talking to my kids about it when they were young and what a terrible thing it was. They said, well, you know, Dad, that was then, this is now.
Wow.
So I think that kind of carries through to a lot of areas in life, that we have a tendency to try to live in the moment to some degree. It's good to be reminded of what has happened and what could be happening again right now.
Did you feel different about it before you were in the Air Corps?
I'm a little bit of a flag waver because of my country. It means a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something I think I carry. I still carry some of those feelings. I don't necessarily feel I connect them to anything particular. It's just me.
Is there anyone in particular that you remember on Memorial Day?
Truthfully, I don't have a particular person. I think I have a general feeling for some of the guys that were my buddies in the Air Corps that I know went to Germany,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't come back. A whole section of what I would have been in had I not had my operation for appendix were reported as being gone.
After the war was over, did you continue flying, or?
I did a little bit in private planes with friends, but I subsequently married a lady who had lost her husband in a private helicopter. He crashed and died. And as a courtesy to her, I didn't want to give her the worry of flying in a private plane, so that's when I quit.
I see. When was the last time you flew?
Flew an airplane itself?
Yeah.
I haven't soloed, but I flew with friends. Well, let's see. It's been about 47 years ago.
Oh my. I'm 46.
But I've flown a lot since then, obviously, in commercial air. I don't know what else to tell you.